Chapter 7 Miss Honey. Matilda was a little late starting school. Most children begin primary school at 5 or even just before, but Matilda's parents, who weren't very concerned one way or another about their daughter's education, had forgotten to make the proper arrangements in advance. She was 5 and a half when she entered school for the first time. The village school for younger children was a bleak brick building called Cruncham Hall Primary School. It had about 250 pupils, aged from 5 to just under 12 years old. The head teacher, the boss, the supreme commander of the establishment, was the formidable middle-aged lady whose name was Miss Trunchbull. Naturally, Matilda was put in the bottom class, where 18 other small boys and girls were about the same age as her. Their teacher was called Miss Honey, and she could not have been more than 23 or 24. She had lovely pale Madonna face, with blue eyes, and her hair was light brown. Her body was so slim and fragile that one got the feeling that if she fell over, she would smash into 1,000 pieces, like a porcelain figure. Miss Jennifer Honey was a quiet person who never raised her voice, and was seldom seen to smile. But there was no doubt that she possessed a rare gift for being adored by every child under her care. She seemed to understand totally the bewilderment and fear that was so often overwhelmed young children, who, for the first time in their lives, headed into the classroom and told to obey orders. Some curious warmth that was almost tangible shone out Miss Honey's face when she spoke to the confused, homesick newcomers to the class. Miss Trunchbull, the headmistress, was something else altogether. She was a gigantic holy terror, a fierce, tyrannical monster who frightened the life out of her pupils and the teachers alike. There was an aurora of menace about her, and even at a distance, and when she came up close to you, you could almost feel the dangerous heat radiating from her, as from a red-hot rod of metal. When she marched, Miss Trunchbull never walked. She always marched like a stormtrooper, with long strides and arms swinging. When she marched along the long corridor, you could actually hear her snorting as she went. And if a group of children happened to be in her path, she plunged right on through them like a tank. We don't meet many people like her in this world, although they do exist, and all of us are likely to come across at least one of them in a lifetime. If you ever do, you should behave as if you would meet an enraged rhinoceros in the bush. Climb up the nearest tree and stay there until it's gone away. This woman, in all her eccentricities, in her appearance, is almost impossible to describe, but I shall make some attempt to do so a little later on. Let us leave for the moment and go back to Matilda and her first day in Miss Honey's class. But after the usual business of going through the names of the children, Miss Honey handed out a brand new exercise book to each pupil. "You have all brought your own pencils, I hope," she said. "Yes, Miss Honey," they chanted. "Good. Now this is the very first day of school for each and every one of you. It is the beginning of at least 11 long years of schooling that all of you are going to have to go through. And 6 of those years will be spent right here at Cruncham Hall, where, as you know, your headmistress is the Trunchbull. Let me, for your own good, tell you something about Miss Trunchbull. She insists upon strict discipline throughout the school, and if you take my advice, you will do your very best to behave yourselves in her presence. Never argue with her, never answer back, always do as she says. If you get on the wrong side of Miss Trunchbull, She can liquidize you like a carrot in a kitchen blender. It's nothing to laugh about, Lavender. Take that grin off your face. All of you will be wise to remember that Miss Trunchbull deals very, very severely with anyone who gets out of line in this school. Have you got the message? Yes, Miss Honey, chirped the 18 eager voices. Myself, Miss Honey went on, want to help you learn as much as possible while you are in this class. That is because I know it'll make things easier for you later on. For example, by the end of this week, I will expect every one of you to know your 2 times tables by heart. And in a year's time, I hope you will know all of the multiplication tables up to 12. It will help you enormously if you do. Now then, do any of you happen to have learnt the 2 times table already? Matilda put up her hand. She was the only one. Miss Honey looked carefully at the tiny girl with dark hair and a round, serious face sitting in the second row. Wonderful, she said. Please stand and recite as much of it as you can. Matilda stood up and began to say the 2 times table. When she got to twice times 12 is 24, she didn't stop. She went twice on with twice times 13 is 26, twice times 14 is 28, twice times 15 is 30, twice times 16 is... Stop, Miss Honey said. She had been listening, slightly spellbound by this smooth recital, and now she said, How far can you go? How far, Matilda says. Well, I don't really know, Miss Honey. For quite a long way, I think Miss Honey took a few moments to let this curious statement sink in. You mean, she said, that you could tell me what 2 times 28 is? Yes, Miss Honey. What is it? 56, Miss Honey. What about something much harder, like 2 times 487? Could you tell me that? I think so, Matilda said. Are you sure? Why, yes, Miss Honey, I'm fairly sure. What is it, then? 2 times 487? 974, Matilda said immediately. She spoke quietly and politely, and without a sign of showing off. Miss Honey gazed at Matilda with absolute amazement, but when she spoke, she kept her voice level. That is really splendid, she said. But of course multiplying by 2 is a lot easier than some bigger numbers. What about those other multiplication tables? Do you know any of those? I think so, Miss Honey. I do. Which ones, Matilda? How far have you got? I don't quite know, Matilda said. I don't know what you mean. What I mean is, for instance, do you know how the 3 times table is? Yes, Miss Honey. And the 4 times table? Yes, Miss Honey. Well, how many do you know, Matilda? Do you know all the way up to the 12 times table? Yes, Miss Honey. What are 12 sevens? 84, Matilda said. Miss Honey paused and then leaned back in her chair behind the plain table that she stood in the middle of the floor of the class. She was considerably shaken by this exchange, but took care not to show it. She had never come across a 5-year-old before, or indeed a 10-year-old who could multiply with such facility. I hope the rest of the class is listening to this, she said to the class. Matilda is a very lucky girl. She has wonderful parents who have already taught her to multiply lots of numbers. Was it your mother who taught you, Matilda? No, Miss Honey, it wasn't. You must have a great father then. He must be a brilliant teacher. No, Miss Honey, Matilda said quietly. My father did not teach me. You mean you taught yourself? I don't quite know, Matilda said truthfully. I don't find it very difficult to multiply one number by another. Miss Honey took a deep breath and let it out slowly. She looked again at the small girl with bright eyes standing beside her desk, so sensible and solemn. You say that you don't find it difficult to multiply one number by another, Miss Honey said. Could you explain that a little bit?